handle the truth.
And welcome, folks. It's March 9th, 2020. And we'll say that it's a very nice day outside here, but we got a lot of political weather that's really heavy, and the stocks are down 1,600 points today. And we got an election here in Washington tomorrow and a full moon tomorrow. And also this week, we look forward to Friday the 13th and Sunday is the Ides of March. So this could be a troubling week. And so we want to give you a 2020 vision of what's really happening here, and we'll say that as far as the well, I'll do that later. But as far as what we have here, essentially we have America is being ruled by lies, and truth are completely absent these days. And the American population, you guys tolerate it. Ruled by lies is now the American way, and when truth is politicized, all is lost. And nobody's ever told me I'm crazy saying this. I wish you would. It would be much easier. But we have two very sane people here today to show what's really going on. And Scott Bennett and James Fetcher, you probably know them. Oh, by the way, this is our 4th year of doing the show in March since 2016. And every week, folks, we're here for you, and hopefully you appreciate it and we'll share it with others. Go ahead, Jim. Let's get into this Mark Meadows and things.
Well, it's very interesting and a very appropriate move. Trump has replaced Mick Mulvaney with Mark Meadows, who's been a strong Trump supporter. One of the major problems of his administration has been that there have been too many Obama holdovers, even Hillary Clinton supporters who have undermined his administration. Trump announced a surprise reshuffle in a series of Friday night tweets saying Mulvaney would become the U.S. Special Envoy for Northern Ireland. The long-rumored move makes Meadows, who announced last year he wasn't seeking re-election to the House, Trump's 4th chief of staff. But frankly, I think it may turn out to be the best. It comes as the Trump administration has faced criticism for its handling of the novel coronavirus outbreak. And it's interesting how they have to introduce the word novel because the coronavirus is just a familiar cold virus. There's nothing new or original or threatening about it. Mulvaney had been leading the interagency response to the virus until Trump designated Vice President Pence to lead the effort more than a week ago. Trump soured on Mulvaney not long after he assumed the role, but wanted to wait until after impeachment to make the move. I think this was appropriate. Some were worried that a switch during the coronavirus crisis would rattle markets craving stability. We do have problems with the market falling, but I think it's largely, inspired by grossly exaggerated claims about the coronavirus. I was recently interviewed by Press TV about what's going on here and offered my opinions based on my research. An American academic and analyst has suggested Zionist elements in the U.S. or Israel have exploited the global coronavirus epidemic to create and spread a deadlier strain of the virus in Iran as a form of biological warfare against Iranians. I believe what's going on is under the cloak of the alleged coronavirus epidemic that biological warfare is being conducted against Iran by Zionist elements who are taking advantage of the situation. This is why Iran appears to be hit so severely. In other words, the coronavirus is being used as a smokescreen to conceal the fact that the real enemies of Iran are deliberately targeting the Iranian people. A more aggressive type of a new coronavirus may be being spread in Iran. I encourage Iranian scientists to examine the virus to see if it is or is not the same as a virus alleged to be causing such harm around the world. Almost certainly, in my opinion, this is in fact a plot to damage Iran. Interestingly, the head of Iran's civil defense organization agrees with me. Brigadier General Goham Rez Jalal said Tuesday media fear-mongering over the new coronavirus and the spread of the disease in his country bolsters claims that the virus is a biological attack on China and Iran, a sector of the U.S. intel. Now, this is from a commentary from a guy who knows a great deal about these things, and I wanted to share. a sector of US intel were the operational cutouts who deployed this coronavirus. My fear is that now the Chinese and Iranians know who are the direct agents responsible for seeding of this 5G sensitive viral strain, they're likely to covertly retaliate against American high-level cutouts using their own specialists. Sadly, the U.S. intel cutouts have let the genie out of the bottle and opened a Pandora's box of biowarfare that will continue until a major number of the world's population succumbs, meaning death may result. This is likely to blow back on the very folks who created and deployed it in the first place. These perps and others who ordered them to do so will likely not expect this. What the evildoers do not understand is that Chinese also have the looking glass device too, and have a satellite-based quantum remote intel gathering means that does not require wires or bugs. You can see and listen into any room, even deep underground or deep in a grounded Faraday cage inside an EMF insulated building. So they already know the full story of who's responsible. It can be expected they will covertly retaliate in like fashion or worse. No need for nuclear war any longer, since these new wars lasted, at least initially, are all likely to be biological, custom race designed biological entities, eventually ICBM nukes of new designs, gas assisted Gen 5, some with neutron flash only, some kinetic only, will probably be deployed by the major nations using ICBM and submarine-fired missiles when these large nations believe they cannot sustain any more bio attacks. Stay tuned, because unless things quiet down quickly, the world's in for a very rough, chaotic ride with many unexpected biological and EMF events. If 5G is fully deployed in the US, no more live births after several years, no more folks over 50 or 60 either. 99% of the people mass mind controlled as in hive, and rates of all kinds of cancer are likely to go off the charts. A whole new cash electronic banking system, which means they're tracking every single purchase you make, whether it's for bubble gum or a candy bar or going to the theater or making a banking transaction, will be instituted as soon as the cutouts have been removed by the hierarchy controllers. All the perps doing these gross evil things to mankind do not realize what's coming their way from the controllers at the very top of the pyramid of power, where these several entities that run the world, the old black nobility, for example, also secretly plan to dispose of every single cutout and clean the deck to prepare for their globalist new world order with a whole new crew. They intend to clean the slate and institute a whole new system staffed by all new younger folks who know nothing but are hive. These controlling entities have no loyalty to the cutouts who served them diligently for many years, none whatever. Meanwhile, Francis Boyle, who's a completely brilliant guy on the law school faculty at the University of Illinois, worldwide celebrated as a leading human rights advocate in the world, has charged U.S. germ warfare program as a criminal enterprise, and for good reason.
You bet.
Scott, your thoughts, my friend?
Well, I think the coronavirus is a massive psychological operation. It's meant to, in my mind, measure what the American people are going to tolerate, what they're going to put up, the mobilization factors of the U.S. government, FEMA, et cetera. They're setting up a camp. I think it was in Nebraska that we talked about last week. There's a ship, Princess cruise ship, that is going to be disembarked. It's currently held under control. People are going to be sent to Travis and other military bases. I think the medical explanation is it's a simple cold flu virus that affects the elderly and people with bad health, as all flus and colds do. I don't see it anything more, but it's a psyop. And you look at the media, you look at the paranoia that they're sowing, and it's a virus guarantor of inoculations and vaccines. So medical companies, their stocks are going to go up. I wouldn't be surprised if the CIA did massive calculations ahead of time for this. So that's the real danger, are these vaccinations and other things that they're going to force into children, or try and force. and I think it's all nonsense. Targeting China and Iran is increasingly coming out is verifiable. It affects the DNA of the Iranians, not the countries between Iran and China. I suspect they've been collecting the DNA of Russians too for this very purpose, to eventually spread this to Russia and have a similar negative effect in Iran. We had Iranians on our radio show, Jim, last Friday, and we were asking them, and they were saying it was a terrible situation back there. A lot of people were dying, and it's not a hoax over there. There are a lot of sick people, and they're unable to go out. The medications aren't being flown in because they've shut down the flights between France and Turkey to Iran, things like that. So they are in dire straits medically and physically, and the certain political people next to the high levels of government have died. So this seems very suspiciously a bioweapon warfare element.
Isn't it interesting, Scott, that China and Iran were collaborating together on the new Silk Road? Going to be a major economic venture, transform international economy. And I've not heard a single peep about the coronavirus out of Israel, which in my opinion further substantiates my belief that this is in fact a Zionist op in relation to Iran, under the camouflage of the coronavirus, which is already an exaggerated threat, where we're going to find even one diligent student has uncovered crisis actors making appearance in multiple locations as a coronavirus victim.
Yeah, it's targeting them. Finishing up with the Mulvaney choice, I think this is a very good news for Mulvaney to be the chief of staff for Trump, because he's already been acclimated. Meadows, I'm sorry. Meadows being transitioned out of the House, Congress, and becoming Trump's chief of staff, because Meadows is familiar and has been acclimated and trained for the past 2, 3, 4 years on the entire Trump, Russia, Ukraine, deep state, FBI, CIA conspiracy. Meadows has seen all the data, all the reports, all the leakers, whistleblowers, the materials. He's been in the hearings in the House. He will be given a top secret SCI clearance by the president, who's in charge of the clearances. So he will know new things. He will know everything the president knows, and he can communicate that through artifice to people in Congress and say, I'm now the president's chief of staff, and look what I discovered. Remember all of the stuff we were looking at, Mr. Jordan, Mr. Gates, all these people? Look at what I've discovered now, sitting down with the president, having a cigar with him in the Oval Office. Look at all this new stuff. Look at what they really were doing. And all of these pieces of the puzzle will really quicken and become much more full and assembled and multidimensional. So Meadows is going to, I think he's being put in there for this proper purpose, to exploit fully the Obama, FBI, CIA deep state that was working against Trump. This will complete the next phase of this prosecution, and Barr and Meadows can be communicating with Barr and all of these inspector general people, so that, as we said before, Trump needs to prepare to prosecute this by the beginning of summer, so that after Labor Day, he's got convictions, he's got plea deals, he's got court cases going on, he's got the full fireworks display, and he can come down like a house of bricks on Biden for all of the Biden and his son Hunter Biden, as well as people like Nancy Pelosi Jr., Paul Pelosi Jr., who was involved with the Bidens in this company. So all of this is going to blow up.
Just as the national presidential campaign is revving into high gear.
Yeah. Right.
Very potent. Don,
Yeah, but getting back to the coronavirus and things, it seems that China and Iran and Italy, I think, weren't they the first to really put in a lot of 5G in places like Wuhan and places north? And aren't they having?
We're coming to that, Don.
Oh yeah, we're coming to that. Okay, and also just want to say that it seems like every election year they're having.
That's good. I'm glad you pulled that out. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and also.
It's quite remarkable and not a coincidence.
That's right. Yeah, and in 2000 we had the Y2K that the whole world was going to end then too. So,
right. How ludicrous can you get?
Yeah. But so this coronavirus is really created here. Yeah, and of course the vaccines will take care of everything, won't it? Go ahead.
Well, turning to Super Tuesday, which had highly unexpected, but now I think in retrospect explicable outcomes, we've had a dramatic reduction in the number of Democratic candidates. It's fascinating that the looming coronavirus threat bolsters the case for Medicare for all and universal paid sick leave. Doubters may claim our nation can't afford Medicare for all, but it's increasingly likely we're about to discover just how costly our current system really is. We reported last week how a new study published in The Lancet, the world's oldest medical journal and perhaps the most prestigious, reported that Medicare for all would save $450 billion every single year, 68,000 lives every single year, ought to be giving Bernie a major boost. Bernie was among those who suggested Wednesday a Medicare for all system, falsely dismissed by Republicans and corporate Democrats as prohibitively expensive and unrealistic, could afford all Americans the ability to see a doctor if they develop flu-like symptoms associated with coronavirus. Let me be clear. It's never been more important to finally guarantee health care as a human right by passing Medicare for all. A number of critics on social media wrote the outbreak, in which at least 60 Americans have so far contracted the respiratory illness and more than 82,000 have worldwide, should cause any Medicare for all skeptic to reconsider their position that the government should not guarantee health care to all Americans that would be free at the point of delivery, as in most industrialized countries. The spread of coronavirus makes one of the strongest points for why we urgently need Medicare for all, tweeted Representative Mark Pocan, who just happens to be my representative.
Yeah, Wisconsin.
If folks can't afford to get tested or treated, how do we manage the spread of disease? Meanwhile, Bernie is sticking to his progressive message while the moderates bow out. The Vermont senator stated in his speech criticizing Trump with a nod to Utah's status as a deeply Republican state, whether you are conservative, progressive, independent, or Democrat, you understand that the United States cannot continue having as president somebody who is a pathological liar. Well, that's Bernie's campaign. I think we're seeing an awful lot of lies and dissembling coming from the Democratic Party.
Really?
Meanwhile, Amy Klobuchar gave her last speech as a presidential candidate in Salt Lake City, criticizing Bernie, saying the difference between a plan and a pipe dream is having things you can actually get done. But how can the United States be the only major industrialized nation that does not have a national health care program for all its citizens? The self-described Democratic Socialist promises major systemic change, including single-payer health care, immigration reform, free public college. Some of the biggest cheers came when he promised a comprehensive plan to address climate change based on the Green New Deal. The establishment is getting very, very nervous, he said. Well, I think it may turn out that it's the Democratic establishment that's getting nervous. Here's a very thoughtful piece by Jeff Cohen. Did Chris Matthews reveal what the Democratic establishment really fears? Mainstream news outlets keep pounding home the same message. The Democratic establishment or Democratic moderates are worried sick that Bernie can't beat Trump. They worry about a Trump landslide and a down ballot disaster in congressional races. The Democrat insiders were told fear a rerun of 72 when progressive anti-war candidate George McGovern lost 49 of 50 states to Richard Nixon. Given our divided electoral map with nearly 40 states stateally blue or red, such a scenario in 2020 is thoroughly absurd. That didn't stop now ex-MSNBC host Chris Matthews, who abruptly resigned Monday after an on-air Sanders-induced crack-up in recent weeks, from offering this prophecy in mid-February. I was there in 1972 at the Democratic convention when the people on the left were dancing in glee, and they went on to lose 49 states in their glee. That could happen again. So clearly, that is what I see. It could happen again. Let's put aside that mad prediction or Matthew's paranoid Cold War comment linking Sanders somehow to public executions in New York Central Park, or its comparison of Bernie's triumph in Nevada with the finality of the Nazi conquest of France, or his sexism, which may in fact be the reason he was tossed. Let's recognize even a crazed TV character like Network's Howard Beale. is capable
Uh-huh.
of blurting out an important truth once in a while on the eve of the Nevada caucus. Matthews let the cat out of the bag about the true fear of many in the Democratic establishment. I'm wondering whether the Democratic moderates want Bernie Sanders to be president. Maybe that's too exciting a question to raise. They don't like Trump at all. Do they want Bernie Sanders to take over the Democratic Party in perpetuity?
Yeah.
If he takes it over, he sets the direction of the future of the party. Maybe they'd rather wait 4 years and put a Democrat that they like. Notice this worry here is not that Sanders will lose, but that he will win and proceed to transform the Democratic Party and presumably the country. Matthews was not expressing fear of 1972. It was more like fear of 1932 when Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a Sanders hero, triumphed and propelled by labor and socialist movements transformed society with a New Deal benefiting working people. I think this is analogous to fears about Trump because he was an outsider, that he'd destroy the Republican Party. What he did was to transform it and made it a more relevant progressive party representing the interests of the people more than of the establishment. Scott, your thoughts here?
Yeah.
Well, I think Bernie Sanders represents the end of the Democrat Party as traditionally known by Americans after 1945. Democrats, I mean, before that too, represented blue-collar workers, plumbers, factory workers, iron, workers, unions, automobile industry, the industry of the United States of America, which was sold down the river and given to China and India for slave wages. And we've gutted and decimated our own internal manufacturing building capability. It's so sad when you watch these ancient videos or movies of America around 1900 and the steel industry and the coal industry and the trains and Carnegie and all of these people. It gives you pride that America was so vibrant and powerful in its manufacturing and its creative spirit. Why was that? Was because we were self-sufficient. And globalism ruined that and sold down the American worker, and we've suffered ever since. We've also given 90%, I think it was the statistic, of our medicine creation to China and India.
Yep.
So we're not creating these things in house anymore, which we're putting ourselves in a perfect position to out on a tree limb waiting for them to cut off the limb. And I think America is at that position. The petrodollar and the weakness of the dollar and all of that, not backed by anything. We're in a very precarious position, and Bernie Sanders sort of does not represent anything traditional. It's fascist tyranny in my mind, forcing and these ludicrous ideas of paying back every student loan and everybody gets health care and things like that. Well, those things sound good. They sound emotionally titillating, but there are so many different problems, so many different wrenches in the American machine, such as the medical industry. We are drunk and deluded with every drug imaginable being given to people. And some of these things are so expensive. It's like I've heard statistics of people that I know saying their drugs are like $13,000 a month if they didn't have government programs or whatever to get them. And I just look baffled because we're dealing with drugs to deal with everything: HIV, gluten allergies, high blood pressure, neuropathy, diabetes. People are becoming so addicted and delusional to the idea of drugs and medicines somehow leading to a better, healthier life when you only have about 70 years on this earth. Deal with it, like it, enjoy it, and don't fill yourself up with every drug imaginable thinking you're going to extend your time. It's only, I think it only destroys the body even more, but this seems to be the perfect instrument for establishing a government-wide health care, remove the elderly using a virus, and then use that virus to create an instrument for government health control and mandates. So yes, there may be we want people able to be given the basic medical care, but we also don't want a government system like Britain has, where when you go into a waiting room in a hospital now, I want to wait, 10 minutes or maybe an hour. I don't want to wait 7 hours. And that's what I'm afraid would happen if you open up the door to people to just come in and use the medical hospitalization process as sort of a social activity, as sort of a a pastime, and that's what happens a lot of these times. And people who are hypochondriacs going in and exhausting the medical community. Medicine is I mean, it's just part of your character. You should be self-sufficient, diet, health, healthy foods and all of that stuff, and use the medical hospitalization process as a last resort, not as a first thing. Jim?
Yeah.
No, that's very, very fascinating commentary, Scott. I appreciate that greatly because I can certainly see how problems like that would make a difference. Meanwhile, this is a Democratic Senate campaign committee is actually acknowledging that Tulsi Gabbard is still in the race. The mainstream, they're not even mentioning her name. They're talking about it only being Sanders versus Biden. I think the reasons are obvious. As a young, vibrant woman of color who's a veteran, who's very thoughtful and articulate, she would make both of them look very bad. Sure. We have now encouraging Warren not to endorse Sanders, which is simply absurd unless you realize now is really on the side of the Democratic establishment. So when you have Buttigieg and Klobuchar and even Bloomberg, and now today Cory Booker throwing their support behind Biden, that raises him up. By Warren not supporting Sanders, it draws him down or does not give him the additional boost she ought to give. I think this is despicable on her part to go along with this play. But then again, now is not speaking up for Tulsi Gabbard either as the DNC scrambles to change the debate threshold. This is just embarrassingly bad. On a CNN panel last Monday, John King spoke with Politico reporter Alex Thompson about the possibility of Tulsi Gabbard qualifying on Super Tuesday for the party's primary debate in Phoenix later this week. I will note this, she's from Hawaii, King said of Gabbard. She's a congresswoman. American Samoa votes on Super Tuesday. The rules as they stand, if you get a delegate, you're back in the debates. And Tulsi's actually from American Samoa. Yeah, they haven't. I mean, that's been the rule for every single debate. If you had a delegate, you were in. The DNC has not released their official guidance for the March 15th in Phoenix, but it would be very obvious. It is very obvious they're trying to cancel Tulsi, who they're scared of as a third-party run if they change the rules to prevent her to rejoin the debate stage. And indeed, as the smoke clears, this is precisely what appears to have transpired. DNC wasted no time announcing they'll rig the next debate to exclude Tulsi. Journalist Michael Tracy tweeted in response, the outcome surprised nobody, least of all Gabbard supporters. The blackout on the Tulsi Tvni campaign has reached such extreme heights this year that they now routinely see pundits saying things like, there are no more persons of color, Elizabeth Warren, the only woman remaining. Not just ignoring her, they're actually erasing her. They're leaving a whole alternative reality out of a narrative in which he is literally officially no longer in the race. After Gabbard announced her candidacy in January last year, I wrote an article explaining I was excited about her campaign because she would severely disrupt establishment narratives. And for the remainder of 2019, that's exactly what she did. She spoke unauthorized truths about Syria, Afghanistan, and Saudi Arabia. She drew attention to the plight of Julian Assange and Edward Snowden, said she'd drop all charges against both men if elected. She destroyed the hawkish, jingoistic positions of fellow candidates on the stage and arguably single-handedly destroyed Kamala Harris-Iran. Right. The narrative managers had their hands full with her. The Russian smears were relentless. The fact that she met with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad was brought up at every possible opportunity, every debate and interview. She was scoffed at and derided at every turn. Wow. So it's unsurprising the DNC felt comfortable striding forward, openly announcing a change in the debate threshold, literally the very moment Gabbard crossed it. These people understand narrative control. They know full well they have secured enough of it on the Tulsi problem. They'll be able to brazenly rig her right off the stage without suffering meaningful consequences.
Mm.
The establishment narrative warfare against Gabbard's campaign dwarfs anything we've seen against Sanders. And the loathing and dismissal they've been able to generate have severely hamstrung her run. It turns out a presidential candidate can get away with talking about economic justice and plutocracy when it comes to domestic policy, and some light dissent on matters of foreign policy will be tolerated, but aggressively attacking the heart of the actual bipartisan foreign policy consensus will get you shut down, smeared, and shunned like nothing else. This is partly because U.S. presidents have a lot more authority over foreign affairs than domestic, and also because endless war is the glue that holds the empire together. So now they're working to install a corrupt right-wing warmongering dementia patient as a party's nominee. And from the looks of the numbers we've seen from Super Tuesday so far, it looks entirely likely those manipulation will prove successful. All this means is the machine is exposing its mechanics to the view of the mainstream public. Both the Gabbard campaign and the Sanders have been useful primarily in this way, not because the establishment would ever let them actually become president, but because they force the unelected manipulators who really run things in the most powerful government on earth to show the public their box of dirty tricks. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Tulsi is appealing to Biden and Sanders to demand the DNC allow her on the Arizona debate stage. Very embarrassing for them, because they, like the Democratic Party, are supposed to be standing up for women's rights, standing up for persons of color. Right. And here they are doing neither, because they are predetermining who's going to be the candidate. Thus, I had just published today an additional tweet. Hashtag P on the DNC. DNC is changing the rules again to sabotage Tulsi's campaign by denying her participation in the next debate. The hypocrisy is blatant. Veteran and woman of color being denied because she would make Bernie and Biden look bad. Unreal.
Absolutely.
Scott, your thoughts?
Outstanding.
Well, if I was a Democrat advising Democrats, which I'm not, never will be, but if I was flipping my hat on the other side, I would say, and we were, 2 years ago, I would say Tulsi Gabbard is the best hope the Democrats have for winning the election against President Trump. It's not going to be the half-wit Biden, who's a drunk and can't remember his name, and he's full of corruption, and his son and Burisma and Ukraine. That's all coming out. It's not Bernie Sanders, the communist, who's 9 years old or whatever. He's going to be dead next week, and his going to Russia and his links to pornography. It's not going to be these schizophrenic, angry women like Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren, the liar, who claims that she's about, American Indian. She's about as American Indian as I am, black. It's not going to be any of these people.
Okay, boy.
It's going to be Tulsi Gabbard, because Tulsi Gabbard is a military officer with military credentials. She's very, very articulate. She's very calm, very low-key, very mellow, very physically attractive. She's a surfer. She's an immigrant. She's a non-white bread woman. She's far superior in her demeanor to anyone else, but her military credentials give her enormous power. She's also got connections and has been briefed by Senator Dick Black. Senator Dick Black went over to Syria and met with President Bashar Assad and others. He briefed Tulsi Gabbard. That's where she got her intel. So she has the crossover effect with Republicans. She's went over, she's met with Assad, she's met with others. That's enormous bravery and articulation and persuasiveness. Again, her military experience over there makes her the best foreign policy person. And she very easily, if I was her chief of staff, I'd get on CNN and say, look, Tulsi Gabbard is going to fix and heal America from all of these wild, reckless war-making activities that Trump is engaged in. Trump started a war with Iran, period. He assassinated Soleimani, one of their top generals, the equivalent of General MacArthur. He assassinated him. He did it with intelligence that was provided by Pompeo that was a lie. Pompeo lied to Congress. That intelligence came from Israeli Mossad, and they used that to wage war, and they violated their treaty with Iraq. They also fired 25, or killed 25, Iraqis, 16 Iraqis, and like 10 Iranians. This whole thing was a precipitated war. They also went into Syria and have stolen oil. They're in Syria illegally. They're stealing oil. That's a war crime. Everything Trump has been doing foreign policy-wise is a war crime. You fired missiles into Syria based on a false war crime. You're engaging with terrorists, the white helmets, the Mujahideen al-Khaliq, the MEK. Trump is engaging in nothing but treason and war crimes and starting wars all over the Middle East. And Afghanistan, he's facilitating the illegal poppy heroin trade. He's still got our troops there. He's dishonored America, dishonored his promises to the American people to pull us out. He's a liar. Tulsi Gabbard is going to actually do it because she's wore the uniform. And she's not delusional. She doesn't care about making people happy. She's going to go over there and say, okay, General so-and-so, Admiral so-and-so, you've got 24 hours to get me a plan about getting a 6-month plan so you can get every ship, every plane, every boat, every tank, every uniform, every food bag, every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine out of harm's way in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, and any other place over there immediately. So I can come back to the American people and say, none of your sons and daughters are going to die in reckless, stupid wars. And America is turning. We are turning back to a Reagan, non-interventional. We're healing the wounds of the past. We're exposing 9/11. We're prosecuting everybody involved with 9/11. We're bringing in people like Robert David Steele, Jim Fetzer, Alan Zabrowski, Barbara Honegger, special commissions on 9/11. We're going to kill, execute by treason anybody involved with it, Dick Cheney, including the president. Yep. We're going to do a massive Nuremberg cleansing and healing of our country, and that starts with Tulsi Gabbard. If she said that, if she had a chief of staff who said that, and the Democrat media had any honorable character of reporting the truth and being on the side of the Constitution, if the media had got behind her in that message and she said it, Jim, she would be leading the polls, and Trump would be a one-term president, desperate, floundering about, looking like an egomaniac, looking like he's just, it's all about him. Because holding Tulsi Gabbard up to Trump, Tulsi wins if she's armed with the right speaking points, the right talking points. But unfortunately, that's Scott Bennett's world. It's not reality. It's not going to probably be reality. And that should, in a sense, make me happy, because as much as I'd like to see Tulsi Gabbard advancing in these ideas, let me say another thing. There are veterans rising up and going to presidential things like with Biden. In Oakland last week, you had 2 veterans. One was Air Force, one was Army. And they showed up at Biden's thing and said, you sent our brothers over to war. You sent us to war.
That's
we
right.
Killed civilians. You are disqualified. And they were boldly barking at Biden. No one would shut them up. They're military. And these silly women are saying, well, be quiet. And they said, we went to fight your wars. And they were barking. They need to do that to Donald Trump. They need to do to Trump what they did to Biden. We're not going to be fighting these wars, Mr. Trump. You're not sending us over there. We're not going to Syria to collect oil. We're not going to stay in Iraq. We're not going to stay in Afghanistan. We don't buy all this bullshit, BS, whatever you want to call it, about keeping them over there so they don't come here. What, invade Detroit, invade Chicago, invade Florida, like Lindsey Graham is barking about? We're not doing that, Mr. Trump. And if you can't get with the program, then you are disqualified. I'd like to see in America where you have that kind of gumption and character, but sadly, we're populated with a bunch of effeminate, castrated half-wits that just want to push us in these endless wars. And I think the blowback is coming in such a degree that this country could be reduced to a third world country overnight if the world ganged up on us. Jim?
Oh, wow.
I thought that was quite a masterful presentation.
Absolutely. Can I add one?
Yeah, go ahead.
One little thing with Biden and Bernie being the 2 loggerheads here. The place you want to be right now would be the vice president person, because they're not going to last 4 years or more, and the vice presidency is going to be has to be very strong, and that's the one that we need. And if Tulsi or somebody else can get the vice presidency, we'll see what happens. But I think
that's not the plan, Don. We'll get
I know.
to it. The plan is not to give Tulsi
any
room or leverage. Most significantly, Scott, however, that plays out this year, Tulsi is a force to be reckoned with for the future.
Okay.
I would not be surprised if she were the first woman president of the United States.
I'd be fine.
Meanwhile,
Yeah,
it took Biden 32 years and 3 presidential campaigns to win a single primary. Brain freeze. This is worth reviewing again. Not only did Joe Biden declare he'd appoint the first African-American woman to the U.S. Senate, when one of the two to have already been elected, Senator Kamala Harris, was campaigning against him for the Democratic nomination. But senators are not appointed by the president. The zone has been rife with gaffes, including the claim that 150 million Americans have died from gun violence since 2007, which would be half the U.S. population of around 330 million, but that he himself was a candidate for the U.S. Senate and that he worked on the 2016 Paris Climate Accord with Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping, who died more than 20 years ago. I'm looking forward to appointing the first African-American woman to the U.S. Senate, Biden said in a stump speech in Sumter, South Carolina, prompting cheers from supporters. Appeared to ignore that Senator Carol Moseley Brown, Democrat of Illinois, served as the first black female senator from 1993 to 1991, while Senator Kamala Harris, Democrat of California, was the second black woman elected to the upper chamber in 2017. Biden's confusing comment about the making the appointment was one of a series of gaffes in recent days as the floundering candidate seeks to win the South Carolina primary. This was before it occurred. The former vice president made the claim about 150 million Americans when federal data shows roughly 156,000 have died of firearm-related homicide. So he doesn't know the diff between thousands and millions. On Monday, he mistakenly proclaimed he was a candidate for the United States Senate and that people could vote for the other Biden if they prefer one of his White House rivals. I mean, it's embarrassingly bad. Also, and this is one of his other great weaknesses, this is a new report from Dr. Eowyn Fellowship of the Mind. Joe Biden strokes and holds young girl's face to his groin. This is a video from 2011. Joe Biden was Obama's vice president. One of the roles of the vice president is to preside over the Senate, including swearing in new senators. Watch how Biden zeroes in on the 6-year-old daughter of Senator Kelly Abbott, a Republican of New Hampshire, but ignores her son entirely. Biden repeatedly pauses and strokes the girl. The most disturbing segment begins at the 3:19 mark in the video when Biden pulls the girl's face to his crotch. Clearly uncomfortable, the girl pulls away and turns to her father. But there's no escape because Biden then closes the gap by moving his body right next to the father and daughter. Some observant and insightful comments from YouTube viewers. Tech Man. Notice how he always zooms right in on the little girls. John Simon. He doesn't seem to even acknowledge the other child's existence since it's a boy. John Lamphere. I see what he does. He charms the parents all the while stroking the kid. His hospitality is his camouflage.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, fake news. Does anyone believe that after not having won a single primary in 32 years across 3 presidential campaigns, Joe Biden is suddenly the toast of the town? Google has been rigging the outcome by sending vote reminders to targeted audiences. Catch this.
Yep.
His conversation with Ted Cruz. Everyone needs to watch this again and again.
As I understand your background, you're not a Republican and nor are you a conservative. Is that accurate?
That would be an understatement.
And indeed, you're the former editor-in-chief of Psychology Today.
Correct.
So you're a respected academic. You testified before this committee that Google's manipulation of votes gave at least 2.6 million additional votes to Hillary Clinton in the year 2016. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I want to make sure I understand. You personally supported and voted for Hillary Clinton.
I was a very strong public supporter of Hillary Clinton, yes.
So you're not just dismayed that people voted for her, but your testimony is that Google is, through bias in search results, manipulating voters in a way they're not aware of.
on a massive scale. And what I'm saying is that I believe in democracy. I believe in the free and fair election more than I have any kind of allegiance to a candidate or a party.
And looking forward, if I understood your testimony correctly, you said in subsequent elections, Google and Facebook and Twitter and big text manipulation could manipulate as many as 15 million votes in a subsequent election?
In 2020, if all these companies are supporting the same candidate, there are 15 million votes on the line that can be shifted without people's knowledge and without leaving a paper trail for authorities to trace.
Now, you described the Go Vote reminder, and you said it wasn't a public service announcement, but rather manipulation. Can you explain how? I'm not sure everyone followed the details of that.
Well, sure. If on election day in 2016, if Mark Zuckerberg, for example, had chosen to send out a Go Vote reminder, say just to Democrats, and no one would have known if he had done this, that would have given that day an additional at least 450,000 votes to Democrats. And we know this without doubt because of Facebook's own published data, because they did an experiment that they didn't tell anyone about during the 2010 election. They published it in 2012. It had 60 million Facebook users involved. They sent out a Go Vote reminder, and they got something like 360,000 more people to get off their sofas and go vote, who otherwise would have stayed home. The point is, I don't think that Mr. Zuckerberg sent out that reminder in 2016. I think he was overconfident. I think Google was overconfident. All these companies were. I don't think he sent that out. Without monitoring systems in place, we'll never know what these companies are doing. But the point is, in 2018, I'm sure they were more aggressive. We have lots of data to support that. And in 2020, you can bet that all of these companies are going to go all out. And the methods that they're using are invisible. They're subliminal. They're more powerful than most any effects I've ever seen in the behavioral sciences. And I've been in the behavioral sciences for almost 40 years.
You know, our Democratic colleagues on this committee often talk about what they view as the pernicious effect of big money and big corporate dollars. What you are testifying to is that a handful of Silicon Valley billionaires and giant corporations are able to spend millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars collectively, massively influencing the results of elections. And there's no accountability. You said, we don't know. We have no way of knowing if Google or Facebook or Twitter sends it to Democrats or Republicans, or how they bias it, because it's a black box with no transparency or accountability whatsoever. Am I understanding you correctly?
Senator, with respect, I must correct you.
Please.
If Mark Zuckerberg chooses to send out a Go Vote reminder just to Democrats on election day, that doesn't cost him a dime.
Fair enough. Do you happen to know who the Hillary Clinton campaign's #1 financial supporter was in the year 2016?
I think I do, but please remind me.
The #1 financial supporter of the Hillary Clinton campaign in the 2016 election was the parent company of Google, Alphabet, who was our first witness. They were her #1 financial donor, and your testimony is, through their deceptive search methods, they moved 2.6 million votes in her direction. I would think anybody, whether or not you favor one candidate or another, should be deeply dismayed about a handful of Silicon Valley billionaires having that much power over our elections to silently and deceptively shift vote outcomes.
Again, with respect, I must correct you. The 2.6 million is a rock bottom minimum. The range is between 2.6 and 10.4 million, depending on how aggressively they used the techniques that I've been studying now for 6.5 years.
Wow. Could you say that again, please? Just
2.6 million is a rock bottom minimum. The range is between 2.6 and 10.4 million votes, depending on how aggressive they were in using the techniques that I've been studying. such as the search engine manipulation effect, the search suggestion effect, the answer bot effect, and a number of others. They control these, and no one can counteract them. These are not competitive. These are tools that they have at their disposal exclusively.
Wow.
If any headline comes out of this hearing, that should be it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Scott, your thoughts, my friend?
Well, Newsmax did a story on Vladimir Putin in which they said that this claim of Google manipulating votes was all Russian propaganda. And they conveniently left out Mr. Epstein's testimony. They conveniently left out this official Senate hearing about this very topic. So Newsmax is advancing this explanation, this theory, this idea as Russian propaganda. That's very alarming to me.
Oh, no.
And, I'm a conservative's conservative. I came out of the Bush administration. I was at Heritage Foundation first. I did my PhD in political theory. I studied social science and family marriage. No one's more conservative than me when it understands this stuff, particularly because I understand natural law, sociological data, the correlation between bad policy and bad society, good policy, pro-family policy, and good healthy society. So when I see these things, that enlightens and advises and animates my political vote and expression and identity. And when I see this sort of thing, what's most upsetting to me, Jim, it's not the manipulation of Google and Facebook and Alphabet and YouTube of all the data and stuff. What's most disturbing and upsetting and infuriating to me is how stupid these people are in these big companies that could possibly vote for or see Hillary Clinton in any positive light is contributing anything to the positive growth and success of American society. That's what's so upsetting to me, is that we have people in America, people in these big companies, Facebook, YouTube, Alphabet, whatever, Google, people that are claiming to be smart, claiming to be code writers, claiming to be computer geeks and engineers, and these bright people, supposedly bright, doing the most stupid, selfish, narcissistic, self-destructive, and massive, societally destructive political choices, such as voting and liking Hillary Clinton. That baffles me, and I know I'm a little bit older than them, old school, but it's sickening in society, because there's nothing good that Hillary Clinton contributes, and not Mark Zuckerberg or any of these other little pricks are going to be able to explain anything that justifies that. I know Hillary Clinton. I've met her personally.
Wow.
I've met her also and seen the stuff she's done. I've seen the shell game of terrorist financing where she's exploited the government agencies, the Department of Health, the Department of Justice with Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer. She's worked with Covington and Burling, the law firm. She's worked with Stuart Eisenstadt. She's worked with Roger Zakheim, the son of my boss, Dov Zakheim. The Attorney General, the Assistant Attorney General, Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer, working with Covington and Burling, all to hide 19,000 bank accounts that the Saudis and the Qataris and the United Arabs were using to fund ISIS and al-Nusra and al-Qaeda in Syria and Libya and elsewhere. That's what Hillary Clinton was doing. She was going around blowing up regimes, blowing up countries. She's up there in Haiti stealing kids. There's also allegations of her doing all sorts of sexual witchcraft, perverse, destructive stuff. Hillary Clinton is one of the most vile, reprehensible criminals, mad, lunatic witches that make the Blair Witch Project look like a soft, fuzzy bunny. Hillary Clinton has done more death and corruption and dead people behind her from people in the White House when she was there. They weaponized the IRS. They weaponized all the instruments of national power to serve her agenda in the Clinton Foundation. And this Clinton Foundation, massive exploitation racket. It is a racketeering organization that went out there and tried to dominate the world, get all sorts of money put into her coffers so she could be president. And it baffles me how people could possibly buy into anything except this emotional garbage. And I've said it before, it's like taking cat shit wrapping it in powdered sugar and calling it a donut. That's what people are doing when they wrap Hillary Clinton in their political vote. She is a massive lump of cat feces that's been dug up from the litter box. There's nothing she represents. But how can people say, oh, well, she's for equal rights. Oh, she's for empowering women. Oh, she's for any other's liberal Democrat claptrap that they try and say needs to be force-fed and impregnated into the American people against their will so that we can create utopia. Oh, the polar bears are coming out from melting ice and climate change. All of this other propaganda is the political philosophy or the default position of these little pricks and geeks like Mark Zuckerberg and others at YouTube, Alphabet, Facebook, you name them. And yet they shut down free speech like you and I and Don, Jim, when we're talking about real crimes like the New Zealand shooting. The moment we expose the New Zealand shooting as a false flag attack, they take down our page. That's what these little pricks are about, and advancing Hillary Clinton and everything wicked. Now, I'm not saying it's Trump. Trump's got some bad things he's done too. Trump is responsible for a lot of the bad actions, the false flag attacks, all these other weird things that we've seen. But Hillary Clinton, representing anything other than the criminal and the agent of death she is totally inconsistent with the facts. And this is where I think America is going to have a massive internet revolution, a massive social and political revolution, because those of us who know what's going on and know who these people are have a duty to educate the rest of our society as well, and to go into court where we're all supposed to be equal and lay down the evidence and demand prosecution of these people. Jim?
Wow.
You've been saying it right on.
What
Don, I think you and I would agree 100% with everything Scott has been saying here so eloquently.
Oh, yeah, he's just fantastic. Now, I wonder if Dr. Robert Epstein is right. What kind of elections do we have? What kind of a government do we have if we don't have true and honest elections with, say, paper ballots and things like that that can be verified? What kind of a government do we have?
Well, Trump has to take a stand. He's got to get Google out of the business of manipulating the vote.
That's
and
right.
I don't know how you go about doing that, frankly. It's very, very disturbing.
Yeah,
because, I mean, this could be a massive influence. Not only did he report between 2.6 and 10.4 million additional votes for Hillary in 2016, but he implied, and I have no doubt, that Google was responsible for the Democrats retaking the House in 2018 and costing Trump at least 2 more Senate seats, leading to the incredibly absurd impeachment and wasting the nation's time and effort to the tune of probably $1 trillion worth of manpower that could have been devoted to more constructive activities. Don, take us out.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. This has been one heck of an hour here on March 9th, Monday. The stocks are right now down over 2,000, and so that's something else. And so this is Truth versus News, and the first hour is great, and the second hour promises to be even better. We're going to get into official facts and things. So stand with us, folks, as we give you 2020 vision here. Adios. Yeah.
We can do it. Yes, we can. We can change things throughout the land.
I'm as mad as hell.
But we all
I'm not gonna
must
take this anymore.
lend a hand. We can do it. Oh, yes, we can. Oh, your neighbor over there, a bit bewildered, but he cares. He just doesn't know what to do. Join together and then they'll be 2. There are others all around, scattered throughout the town. Reach out and you will see your numbers swell to 3. We can do it, yes we can. We can change things throughout the land, but we all must lend a hand. We can do it, oh yes we can.